You know, melanated people can be prejudiced without even realize that they're being prejudiced. Share a quick story with you. My granddaughter, she goes to a private school and she takes the bus to school. There's a certain bus that picks her up in the morning at a certain time. There was a time where, like, maybe 3, 4, 5 times the bus driver would see us sitting out there, and these are black Americans. These are black bus drivers, and some white, and I think there's maybe one Asian bus driver. But every morning, she would be out there on time, and they would just drive right by her, just speeding. So her other grandmother was going out there to make sure she was getting on the bus, and a couple of times they almost drove by her, and they kept doing it. They did it so much to the point where I said, let me go out here and wait with her. So went out there with her one morning, waiting on the bus. Here come the bus. This bus was driving so fast, I knew he wasn't going to stop. This dude was not going to stop. And I, like, put my hand out there and like, you're going to stop? And he, like, pushed on the brakes real quick, and he stopped with this shit-eating smile on his face. This dude had this smile on his face. And I'm looking at him like, yo, man, I said, for the past 3 or 4 times, man, they just been bypassing her, right? And he said, oh, there's different drivers on the route and whatnot, man. I said, look, man, I said, we've been downtown over and over again, man, and they keep passing her up on the bus stop, man. We get tired of paying to have her go out there. Her mom and dad can't always take time off from work to make sure she get to school, man, right? And he, all the time, just had this smile on his face. And I said, yo, man, I said, brown girls go to Bishop Ludden too, Bishop Ludden Grimes. I said, brown girls go to Bishop Ludden too, right? And he, like, just kind of laughed and whatnot. From that point on, they've been picking her up every single day. Now, there was a new driver this past week, and she missed her first bus. So, like, the second bus, there's one other bus that would pick them up that's going out to Grimes, right? And that bus was coming, and he was going to go right by her. She put her hands out like she saw me do, and he, like, pushed on the brakes, and then he backed up. He came back and said, oh, you go to Grimes? And she said, yeah, she had her shirt on. And then when she got on the bus, she said he started questioning her. You know, who are your parents? What do they do? What kind of work do they do? Right? And she was telling him, and I had to tell her, like, look, you don't always, share information with strangers, man. If you don't know that person, man, you don't really need to be sharing information. You need to know that, what did your mom do? What did your dad do? And what do your grandparents do? And then he asked her, are you safe? In other words, he was asking her if she was safe out at her school. Now, why would her grandparents or her parents pay for her to go to a private school for her not to be safe? And see, that's where a lot of black Americans got the wrong idea of white people, just like there's white people that's got the wrong ideas of black people, right? In his mind, he was thinking because she go to that private school that's predominantly white people, she's got to be discriminated against, there's got to be prejudice and racism, and she's not safe, and she's always targeted. But that's not the case. See, if there's an issue at the school, I usually let her parents deal with it, or, her grandmom deal with it and stuff like that. But if it's serious, I usually step in because I handle things different, okay? When I handle things, it kind of changes the energy and people are uncomfortable, right? So if I have to go out there, then there's something that's serious, right? But other than that, I just let them handle it, right? But there's been no problem. She's safe out there. But he had asked her, are you safe? And she says, yes, I'm safe, right? But for the thought of him asking, what do your parents do? Where do you live? What kind of work do they do? Right? Because she goes to a private school that's predominantly white. Okay, so I think a lot of blacks discriminate because when those bus drivers drove by and they saw her, they're the city bus drivers. When they drive by and they see her, they automatically think she goes to a city school. They just knew she go to a city school, so they didn't stop. But when they found out that she was at a private school, they're like, you go out there? What does your parents do? Who are your parents? What's their names? What's their last names? Where do they work at? Just nosy questions that was being asked to her. So, yeah, blacks can also be prejudiced too, because they were unaware that they were actually discriminating against her because of the color of her skin. They felt because of the color of her skin, she did not attend that private school. And because of the fact that they didn't think she attended that private school, they just bypassed it, drove right by her, and failed to pick her up on several occasions. To the point where we had to contact the bus company, we contacted the school, and then finally I took time off to go down there and wait for the bus with her. And when the bus driver, he was about to pass her. He was full speed. And I stuck my hand out. I was looking at him like, yo, man. I said, what, you just going to drive right by her? Right? Oh, I didn't know. He just had that smile on his face. Like, yo, man, brown girls go to Bishop Ludden too. Right? And from that point on, she had not had a problem except for this past time. She missed the first bus, and the first bus came, and she did what I did, and he stopped and backed up. Well, she had to run to the bus, and he was like, oh, you go to Bishop Ludden Grimes? And she's like, yeah. And then he started asking questions like, what do your parents do? So black people discriminate just like white people do.